Okay. Page 66. First paragraph. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to fertility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. That's an interesting statement. Years ago, I was helping somebody out, and we were talking about, we got this point in the program, and they, he said, I don't know about my ex girlfriend. He says, I can't stop thinking about her. I said, well, how often do you think about it? He said, every day. He says, at least, I says, for how long? You know, half hour, hour. I said, how many times a day? 5 or 6 times a day. I said, really? I said, for how long you been doing that? He said, at least a year and a half. Yeah. And I can't remember exactly what it came out to, but we added up how much, and it was months of his life that he squandered away just thinking about her. And so every time I see that in the book, I think about him because that's what he gave up in his life for nothing. So, all right, we talked. Does anybody got any questions on resentments and fears? We went over that. Okay. So now, when we get to the sexual inventory, I think I shared this with you before that it's not about. This is the only part of the inventory that's not about the physical. It's just the mental. Okay. So it because what we're doing is we're looking to see. Remember in the third step how we've thought and acted and reacted throughout our whole life, uh, past, present, and future. Right. Well, here we're not looking at the physical. We're just looking at the mental part. So again, it's not about who's in my uh, who's in my bed, but rather what's in my head. The important thing is not about what I was doing with somebody sexually, but what was I doing with that person sexually. That's the important thing. So it's all the mental part here. So the cause of all your sex problems are either fear, resentment, dishonesty, and selfishness. Every sexual problem that you have is going to be because of one of those four things. I said the cause of all your sex problems are either fear, resentment, dishonesty, or selfishness. One of those four things is the cause of all your sex problems. So the difference between humans and other species is that their sex life is usually at God's direction. So an animal it'll be a certain time of the year and they'll get that it's time for them to mate and they'll mate. The male senses this and they reproduce. They don't think about having sex. They don't think about having sex before they have sex. They don't think about having sex while they're having sex. They don't think about sex after sex. I think there was a study done someone that proved dolphins do. Have you ever heard that? Dolphins, in you heard that? Okay. That dolphins are like humans in that respect. I don't know how they figured that out, but yeah. But besides dolphins, animals don't think about sex. Humans, we think about sex before sex, we think about sex during sex, and we think about sex after sex, right? And uh, and that's where all our troubles lie. We don't. Animals don't think about who they're going to have sex with, what we do, uh, or how many times they're going to have sex, what we do, what position they're going to be in, right? What we do. With animals, it's all like God's direction. That's why there's very little sexual problems in all the other species. I never saw a cow laying on a psychiatrist's couch, talking about that bastard don't call me or nothing. But we human beings, we make choices about sex. In there lies all our problem, right? We make decisions about sex. We think about sex. And usually we're going to wind up in the wrong place with the wrong person or persons uh, for the wrong reasons. Now, on your inventory sheets, I told you before that when it comes to a sexual act that you're inventorying or a sexual relation you had with somebody, rarely is it going to be because of the sexual instinct. The three basic instincts of life, right? Social instinct, security instinct, sexual instinct. Those are all God given, therefore good. It's how we warp them and take them out into left field that make them not good. But when it comes to sex, it's rarely going to be about the sexual instinct. For instance, have you ever had sex for money or for something that is you know, drugs? Yeah, drugs, right? That would be for money, right? So, where have you ever had sex to feel better about yourself? That's the social instinct. If it's for money or drugs or something, that's the security instinct. Rarely is your sexual things going to be about the sexual instinct, because the sexual instinct is pretty simple. God instilled in us the desire to mate, so we wouldn't become distinct, right? So we would reproduce and we wouldn't become distinct. But when you start adding in the fact that we think about these things, we think about sex before sex, we think about sex during sex, we think about sex after sex, in there lies all the problem. Because how we think about sex is going to determine how we do it or not. And so one sex act can hurt a lot of people. So we automatically think that if we hurt somebody in the sexual area, it would be caused by the sex instinct, but it's rarely that's the truth. Okay. It might be for physical or emotional gratification. It may be so we're doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, right? We talked about that mostly, almost 100% of the time, one of the other two basic instincts of life come into play when it comes to a sexual act. There's lots of reasons that fall within the social instinct or the security instinct that sex is about. Some people have sex to build their self esteem, right? What is that? That is not a sexual instinct. That could be a security instinct, but it's probably a social instinct. I want to take a minute before we go over the sheets to go over the seven deadly sins. Okay, and you could write this down if you want. You don't have to. You could. What I'm going to read to you, I took out of the dictionary. I looked up the seven deadly sins, one word at a time. So, because recovery is what? It's about removing the things that block us from the sunlight of the Spirit so we can get closer to God. Okay, so the first deadly sin is pride. Now, a lot of us would think that pride is a good thing. Take pride in what you do. That's a good thing, right? But here's where people like us take it out of perspective and it warps us. A definition from the dictionary for the word pride is too high an opinion of oneself, of one's importance or superiority. Another definition for the word pride is arrogant behavior. And another definition is to be proud of, take credit for, right? So you can see how those three definitions are not a good thing, especially for people like us that take everything to the extreme. Okay, and greed, the next deadly sin, greed. Uh, the word greed comes from a Latin word, and the Latin word that it comes from means to crave more. Crave more, right? So greed is a definition from the dictionaries, an eager or selfish desire, especially for wealth, food, or drink. And another definition is an excessive passion for things, right? More, more, more. People like us, you could take the word enough out and change it with more, no matter what it is. Never get enough love, attention, praise, money, sex, whatever. I always need more of those things, right? So, lust is the next one. 4 definitions for lust: strong sexual desire, especially when uncontrolled, a passionate or overmastering desire, exceeding proper limits for sexual desires. And here's an interesting one for the word lust: a craving. I like that. We're not talking about cocaine or booze. We're talking about anything when you lust, right? Another deadly sin is anger. And 3 definitions for anger. 1, a strong passion or emotion excited by injury or rage. 2, to excite to wrath, enraged. 3, a strong feeling of displeasure and belligerence. So it's easy to see how that can block us off, right? Gluttony, that's a good one. 2 definitions for gluttony: eager for anything in excess, and of course, the one we're all familiar with, eating too much. Again, more, quicker, faster, can't get enough. Next deadly sin is envy. 3 definitions. First one is to grudge another person's good fortune. Second definition, pain or distress excited by the sight of another's superiority or success. Third definition, a sense of discontent or jealousy about or desire for another's advantages or possessions. Instead of being happy for somebody that they're doing something good with their lives, they're getting somewhere in life, we get jealous. And we start, I can't believe he got it, that son of a bitch. Can't believe he got that. Look at her in that new car. Who does she think she is? That kind of stuff. Instead of being, and the last deadly sin is sloth. 2 definitions: inactive, sluggish, unnaturally heavy. And the second definition is to avoid exertion. And alcoholics and addicts are good at sloth, though we may not realize it because we're good at, I'll do that tomorrow. That's sloth at its finest. I'll take care of that tomorrow. Huh? Laziness? Laziness is sloth, yes. Inactive, right, is lazy. So anyway, those things, if I wanted to go through those because they're covered pretty well in the 12 and 12 on page 48 if you want to look at them there. Okay. So now, and then the fourth thing that we inventory, of course, is going to be the harms to other people, the harms we do to others. Now, what I want to do is I want to teach you how to go over your sheets. This is very important. I promise you, if you do this, if you follow the instructions and you do this, you're going to be able to pinpoint the exact nature of your wrongs. You're going to see where your anger stems from, where your fear stems from, right? We went over anger, resentment, and fear already, but now we're going to talk about the sheets. So here's the sheets that you have. I have one that's blown up, so you can see it better, right? All right. So again, we talked about this last week. You're going to write top to bottom, unless you don't. If you insist, go ahead and write left to right. But it winds up becoming more useful if you do right top to bottom. Okay. So what you're going to find out when you get done with column one is, and we're talking about resentments now, is you're going to find out just how mad at the world you are. Because there's a lot of times it seemed that, oh, I don't, I'm not that mad and don't have many resentments or nothing, but we realize it because, again, we'll list people, institutions, or principles with whom we're angry. Principles. Don't forget your principles. Spend time and find principles to put on here. They could go on your resentments, they could go on your fears, could go on your sexual conduct, could go on your harms to others. Just find them. They're really going to help you. Again, a principle is a moral, a value, or a belief. Okay? And everything you've ever done in your life is because of the principles or the lack of principles. Column 2. I ask myself, why am I angry and what they did to me to cause the anger, right? So over here, I put down what they did to me. So when I get to the end of column 2, I find out it's really not the people so much as what they did to me. Again, the idea here is we're trying to find the exact nature of our wrongs. Where does my anger stem from, right? What is the exact nature of my wrong? Now, when you get to column 3, I don't want you to put a check in every box. You got 6 boxes there, okay? So self-esteem may be like, if you put me down in the eyes of others, you're going to make me feel little, you're going to make me mad, right? And then the next one is your personal relationship. If you threaten my personal relationship, you're going to make me mad. Or my ambition to these things also, right? So if it's more helpful if you can just put one check in each of the basic instincts. So at the most, having 3 checks here. If you need to put emotional and material, check them both, or self-esteem and personal relationships, check. If you need to, go ahead. But it's easier if you just do one of them. Well, go ahead by all means if you need to. And then in column 4, let's talk about the sexual instinct on your sheets. If you notice, it says there's 2 boxes: acceptable sex relations and hidden sex relations. And people get this confused all the time. Okay? Acceptable sex relations has got to do with your partner. It doesn't matter if your partner's a male or a female, but if it's your partner, that's an acceptable sex relation. Okay? Everything else is a hidden. If it's not the spouse, it could be a mouse or whatever, right? Whatever it is, any other human or animal is hidden sexual relations. So let's just look at one thing for a minute. Let's say that I had an affair and I got in a big fight with my partner over it, right? And so I put her down on here, even though I had the affair. I got, right? And she would go down. Anything to do with her would be in that acceptable sex relations. The person I had the affair with, if there's anything that needs to be, would be the hidden sex relations. You understand that? So acceptable and hidden. Acceptable is your partner, everybody else is hidden. Now, if you're not in a relationship and you're just casually dating, that probably can be considered acceptable sex relations, but you need to check your motives on that before you quickly go into acceptable, because your motives will probably make it hidden. If you're just casually dating, but you're not being honest, and you're just telling them, whatever, and you're just trying to get laid, that's probably more hidden than acceptable. Okay? Now, in column 4 is you're going to put your part, right? That's what it says. Putting out of mind the wrongs others have done, I resolutely look for my own mistakes. What did I do, if anything, to set in motion trains of circumstances which in turn caused people or institutions to hurt me and eventually led to my resentment. So I do something, other people retaliate. I resent that. So long as I resent that, I don't have to look at what I did. Because I did something to you, you retaliate, and now I'm mad, and I don't have to look at my part because now I'm mad at you, right? So they become the scapegoat for me to transfer the blame to. It was my fault to begin with, but now it's your fault. This is why us alcoholics enjoy resentment. This is why we need resentments, people like us. Because it takes the blame off of me. Does that make sense to you? As long as I'm mad at you, it takes the blame off of me. I don't really have to look at my part and what I did. Well, can you give me an example? Like, what's the principle? Men don't cry. Okay. So again, were you here last week? Aha! Did you watch the video? You missed it. That's if you miss a week, people watch the video. So we covered that last week, but I don't mind telling you again. If you can say that you had no part in it in column 4, you don't leave it blank. Then I want you to put in column 4 how you acted and reacted to what was done to you. Never leave it blank. So in column 4, it's either going to be your part, what you did, or how you acted and reacted to what was done to you. Because there have been times in our life that we have really been a victim. But the truth of the matter is, most people who come into the rooms of recovery, 30, 40 years old, whatever, 50 years old, they may have once upon a time been a victim when they were 10 or 15 or 20 years old. But for the last 20 or 30 years, they haven't been a victim, they've been a volunteer to the pain. Because don't forget, we went over what the word resentment means. The Latin root origin of the word resentment means to feel again. And so for the last 20 years, this person has been feeling again and again and again the abuse they got 20 years before. But they're not a victim. They haven't been a victim for a long time. That's not to discount or minimize what happened to them. But it's the truth is the truth, and a fact is a fact that you're not a victim anymore. Get off the cross. We need the wood. Oh. Okay. In column 5, it says, which of the below character defects caused me to do what I did, or caused me to want to hold on to the old resentment, even though I may have done nothing to cause it? So, what you're going to do in column 5 is I want you to only click 2 things at the most. I don't want you. A lot of people will mark everything, all 4 things. Don't do that. 2 things at the most. The 2 most relevant things, okay? So now, here's what I want you to do. Here's how we're going to analyze your thing. And this is so important, and it's so accurate. Trust me, this is spot on. Let's say you have 2 pages of resentment. You might have 5 pages. You might have 10. How many? 7. Okay. All right. So what is it, ones? So there's 7 lines on. So you had 49 resentments. That's not too bad. Now, if you've been around 10 years and you've got 49 resentments, that's terrible. But so here's what I want you to do. I want you to take all of you, however many pages you have, we're only talking about resentments right now. So just the resentments. So let's say you got 7 pages. I want you to go down and count how many check marks you have in each of the 6 columns, starting with social instinct, self-esteem. How many check marks are in self-esteem? Count all your 7 pages. And then come back to the top here, and let's just say, for this example, that we're going to put down the number 17 in self-esteem. Okay? Then I'm going to look at personal relationships. I'm going to count all the check marks I have in personal relationships on all of my pages. And let's, for argument's sake, put down here number 15. Okay? The next one, the security instinct, there's 2 choices: material security, emotional security. Let's count all the check marks in material security, and let's put the number 11 there. Okay? This is just an example. And then emotional security, let's put the number 19. In acceptable sex relations, let's put the number 3. And in hidden sex relations, let's put 1. Okay? And it wasn't an animal. That's fine. Now, go to column 5 and do the same thing. So for selfish, I want to put 12. Again, I'm just making up numbers. Dishonest, I put 14. Self-seeking, frightened, I put 10. And inconsiderate, I put 11. You now have the total of all your. No, I'm sorry, let me back up. Before you do that, you need to go with your sponsor and go over your 4th step, because your sponsor may say to you, you need to put a check here where you don't have one, or you need to take that check off, it doesn't belong there. Okay? It's important that you do this not by yourself, but with help. And the help you get, they'll tell you, yeah, because they'll ask you, why did you put self-esteem here? And if they don't like your explanation, they'll tell you, take it off. And why didn't you put emotional? And then you tell them, if they don't like it, no, mark it. So it's important that you work with a sponsor on going over this. But let's say after you worked with your sponsor, those numbers I gave you are the numbers you have. Guess what? I now know for the first time in my life where my anger stems from. Every time I get angry, more often than not, it's going to be my emotional security was threatened. Do you remember the mantra? Resentment comes from a threat to any basic instinct. Can't do anything about other people. Can't do anything about what people do. But maybe with God's help, I won't get mad. If I don't get mad, I'm not angry. If I'm not angry, I don't have resentment. If I don't have resentment, I'm not blocked off from God. Same thing with fears, right? Fears come from a threat to any basic instinct in my life. Can't do anything about other people. Can't do anything about other people do. But maybe with God's help, I won't be afraid. If I'm not afraid, I don't have fear. If I don't have fear, I'm not blocked off from God. So this is pinpointing where my anger comes from. So important to people like us, because we are a bag of emotions. Take a normal person's emotions and multiply them by 100. That's us. That's people like us. You may think you're not that bad. Okay, multiply it by 20. That's you. You're definitely not normal if you're in this room. We're not. We're just not normal. I tell you from day one, I tell you, we're twisted. People like us are twisted. So I know that every time I get angry, more than anything else is going to be my emotional security, because that's what my check marks told me. Now, the next thing that's going to get me mad more than anything else is number 17 for me, is my self-esteem. So almost 100% of the time, it's going to be one of those 2 things. Because that's what my inventory told me. And my inventory is spot on. It pinpoints the exact nature of my wrongs. Now, to take it a step further, here's what happens. Every time somebody threatens my emotional security, I get mad. And how I act out? I go over to column 5. And my biggest number there was 12, selfish. When somebody messes with my emotional security, I'm probably going to act out in a selfish way. And what happens when I do that? I'm going to step on somebody's toes. Because whenever you take a shortcut, you step on people's toes and they retaliate and cause pain and suffering in our life. And the first thing we say, how could you do that to me after all I've done for you? Right? That's the first thing that comes to our mind. Not what I did, but how could you do that to me? That's what I think. But this is so accurate. I'm sorry, it wasn't 12. I'm just looking at it again. The highest number was 14, dishonest. So if you mess with my emotional security, I'm going to act out in a dishonest way. And I'm going to step on somebody's toes. They're going to retaliate, cause pain and suffering in my life, which is going to set something else off, probably my self esteem. And then I'm going to act out in a selfish way. You see, column 3 sets off column 5, which sets off column 3, which sets off column 5. It's a vicious cycle, it doesn't stop. You following me? This is how we live our lives. When you do your inventory with these sheets and follow it like this, and go over with your sponsor what you've checked in here, and explain it to them, and your sponsor okays all your check marks, then you're going to know exactly where your anger stems from. You're going to know exactly where your fear stems from. You're going to know exactly where your sexual deviations stem from, and what the reason is why you hurt other people. You're going to know those things because your sheets tell you. They don't lie. Now, I never knew none of this stuff. How did I know any of this stuff? All I knew is what the book talks about. I looked at what you did. That's as far as I ever went in my thinking. All right, my thinking never got past that entirely different angle or any of that stuff. No, my thinking was all about what you did to me. How could you do that to me after all I've done for you? So in column 4, we're going to find out what the book talks about. That invariably we made decisions based on self, which later put us in a position to be hurt. And that's how we act out. So again, anger comes from a threat to any basic instinct. Can't do anything about other people, can't do anything about what other people do, but maybe with God's help, I don't have to get mad. So, the next time you get angry at something or someone, or an institution or something like that, take a minute, inches and seconds. Look at it. See what's really going on with you. So what am I mad about? Where did this come from? And if you're understanding your inventory process, you will understand everything you need to overcome resentment and fear, sexual deviation, and hurting other people. Does that make sense? Does anybody got any questions on this? Because I want to make sure we got this before we move on. Everybody got this? Yes.
One of my basic things. Because I wrote it down, you said, maybe with God's help, I won't get angry. Do I need to throw in the part where you said I won't get, if I don't get mad, then I won't get angry? Do I have to put in that mad part, or can I just keep it straight?
It's the same thing, If it's just about getting mad or getting angry. You don't have to use both of those words, but but the thing that's important is that where it comes from. It comes from a threat to one of my basic instincts. Somebody has threatened if it's personal relationships, like like let's say me and Levi are friends, and somebody interferes with that, I'm going to get mad at you. And the ambition is just the same, because let's say we're not friends, but I want to be friends with him, and you interfere with my ambition for that. I'm going to be just as mad at you as if you interfered with my friendship. Does that make sense? Okay. So, excuse me? Yeah, that's what Levi says he does. Last week he was sharing that, and that might be an added bonus to help you. You know, the resentment prayer, if that don't work for you, again, what's in the back of the book is not That's some person's personal, and what somebody else shares, it's like somebody shares something, may help you, may kill your ass too. We don't know. There's so that's why in the 12 and 12, I never read step 2 in the 12 and 12 because Bill Wilson went around and wrote step 2 by asking a whole bunch of people to give their opinion in step 2. It was not Bill that wrote that. It was everybody else's opinion. And you know what they say about opinions, right? They're like assholes. We all got one. So I don't, what it's if I share something, if if you question what I ask me where to show you where it's at in the book. If I can't do that, then you probably maybe shouldn't do it because we're not talking cured here. I might kill your ass too with my sick thinking. What we're talking about when we started this inventory process was, remember we wrote on the board the business and the personal inventory? Flawed thinking, right? That's what we're looking at in our personal inventory. The stock in trade is our flawed thinking. And that's what we want to get to, right? So our flawed thinking is, where does my anger come from? Where does my fears come from? So everybody got this? Does this make sense to everybody? The exact nature of my fear and the exact nature of my resentment, these are the things that block me off from God. Right? Because when I'm worried about something, it's the only reason I have fear is because where's God? Without God, I fear, fill in the blank. With God, I don't have any fear because God is an infinite power and I'm a finite power. And the book says we always exceed our finite power always fails us. Self-reliance always fails us, right? So, but infinite God, there is no beginning, no end. He can't win. So, where's God when it comes to fear? And when it comes to anger, I need to look at this and realize, what's going on here. I know where it's coming from. If I'm intimate with my inventory process, I know that what you just did or said, or what I just thought you did or said, is affecting probably, and whatever my inventory tells me, probably with me, emotional security or self-esteem and my social security, right? And my social instinct, rather. Sorry, self-esteem and my social instinct, and social security. Yeah. Don't listen. That's what that's what happens when you get my age. Ever since they forced me on Medicare, with I take my all my medication's been so expensive now.
Definition of pride, and they had the three negative sort of deals, but they also had, there's a good effect about it. It's taking a just accomplishment for one action, but it had something to do with the self-esteem part of it, and every one of the seven deadly sins is about the same way, like sloth. It's got the sinful part of it is I just lay around on my ass and not do anything. The good part about it is sometimes sloth can be used to develop patience. And, it's like one of the old timers came up to me and said, "Mike, never is it recorded in the history of mankind that anyone got up a hill sitting on his ass." Well, I went out to Lake Hefner to the bike trail. I was out there getting a drink of water, And this guy came up on the rollerblades, didn't know how to stop. So we sat down and he went right up that hill on that.
Well, I don't know if, I think certainly there's a good side to pride, but people like us take stuff out of proportion all the time. I'm not sure there's a good side to sloth. I don't think sloth helps you with patience. I think impatience helps you with patience. Uh, you know, but sloth is laziness. It's just I don't see a good thing to that. But pride, there could be some good sides to pride, but people like us don't. We abuse that stuff. Don't work for us. All right. Any questions on the fourth step? Nobody got a question on the step
If I
four?
give an example that's as specific as, let's say, a woman and the institution of marriage and the principle that divorce is socially unacceptable. And I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm thinking maybe it's not the woman that was the problem, maybe it's marriage. Maybe it's not marriage, maybe it's the fact that divorce is the problem.
Yeah, maybe it's you.
And
Let me think about that. Well, that's a good point. That's a good point because women as a whole, if you hate or mad or don't like all women, then the instead of one person, you could put women down as an institution. Or the same thing applies for men. But it's very unlikely that you hate all women, you know, um, and it's very unlikely you hate all men. So it would probably be more rewarding for you to limit it to certain women rather than the institution of women. But if there's something really that you don't like about the institution of women, then inventory it. But
man,
so marriage is you're resentful at marriage. Yeah. Well, okay. No, that's fair. That's fair to inventory that. You know, and divorce you said is socially unacceptable in whose society?
it,
The Indian society. Okay. Because certainly not in American society. No, it's not. And divorce is more commonplace. In the American society is, um, uh, I don't know if any of you have sat through my relationship workshop. It's online if you want to see it. But in researching that, I found out that the majority of homes in America, people come from uh, dysfunctional family uh, units, not healthy, functional family units. So the norm in America is that you come from a dysfunctional family unit. And here's the problem when it comes to marriages. If the majority of the people come from a dysfunctional family unit, and one of those people happen to meet somebody that comes from a healthy family unit, and sparks fly at the beginning, it's never going to work. It's never going to work because a healthy person knows when and how to get into a relationship and when and how to get out of a relationship. People like us don't. We don't know that kind of stuff. We jump in, immediately, and we don't. And we want to hold on forever, and so the yeah, that's my formula. Sick plus sick, two people. Sick plus sick equals sicker. Sick. Not why. Not why. And okay, if you have your 12 and 12, which you go to page 43. The bottom of page 42 says, step 4 is our vigorous and painstaking effort to discover what these liabilities in each of us have been and are. We want to find out exactly how, when, and where our natural desires have warped us. How, when, and where. It does not say why. But no, but I understand that, but my point is, the reason it doesn't say why is because if you inventory how, when, and where, you're gonna find out why. But if I tell you why, it'll go in one ear and out the other, and tomorrow you'll be doing that shit all over again. 40, yeah, 43, top of page 43, 12 and 12. How, when, and where our natural desires have warped us. And that's what we're going to uncover. Recovery is uncover, discover, and discard. That's what recovery is. Uncover, discover, discard, and move on as a healthier person. You know, so yeah. But to get back to your series, inventory marriage is fine. Inventory the principle of divorce, that's fine too. See what you come out with. You'll come out with a better understanding than when you started with because you're making the effort and you're asking God to help you. Don't forget that each time you start writing, you need to do your third step and bring God back into the writing of the fourth step. This way, you do a fearless moral inventory and not a unmoral, untruthful inventory. Okay, Joe.
I probably asked this before, but I forgot what you said. So sick plus sick equals sick. Sick plus healthy.
Well, so we're talking about two people getting into a relationship, right? So here's the thing: when somebody comes into recovery, it's fair to say that whoever that person is not healthy. They're not healthy. Nobody wakes up in the morning, my life is great, I think I'll join AA. That don't happen, right? So that person is not healthy. So when you put two people like that together, you have sick plus sick, which equals sicker. Now, if you have one that's unhealthy and one that's sick plus healthy equals sick. Healthy plus healthy equals a chance. If you get two healthy people in a relationship, all you have is a chance. You don't have a guarantee.
So if you get into recovery, you become healthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I got sober, it was a miracle. It sure was. But when it came to my sponsor asked me, what I wanted, right? I want to change my life. I want a good life. And I want to get a woman and have a good life. He said, well, what kind of woman do you want? And he said, and I started telling him, he said, no, write it down for me. So I wrote down all these qualities I want in a woman. And he said, and I read it to him. He said, wow, that's some woman. He said, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is she? And I said, it's a 10. He says, Danny, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are you? I said 7, 8. We discussed it for a while, and I finally agreed I was about a 2 or a 3. And he shared something that to this day I'll never forget. His voice is right here in my head, telling me it was 34 years ago. And he said to me, Danny, 2s don't get 10s. 2s get 2s or 3s. He said, every once in a while, a 2 may fool a 10, but he can't keep her. Can't keep her. So then I thought, okay, well, then my job then is to make myself, attractive to a 10. He said, well, how do you do that? I said, I don't know. I do the right thing and God puts this woman in my life. He said, God's no pimp. It's not God's job to put a woman in your life. It's your job to become as close to a 10 as you can be. And when you do that, you will attract your like kind. Yeah. So that's the way that goes. But sick plus sick certainly equals sicker. So I don't know how we got onto that topic. But so,
What are you now, Dan?
what am I now? I'm a solid 8 today. I'm a solid 8. That's the only way to friggin' 8 women are. I don't know. But yeah, I know how to have a healthy relationship today. And I was married for 16 years, and I divorced her because for 3 years it wasn't. She's a great person. We're good friends today. She works for me actually, and we're still friends. But her behavior was something that I just couldn't live with. It wasn't healthy, and I kept asking her to go get some help, and she wouldn't get help because nothing was her fault. It was always somebody else's fault. And so for 3 years, I put up with that, and I sort of wasn't going nowhere. And I just said, "This is just not healthy for me." I like a peaceful home. I don't like arguing and stuff. And she was into that kind of stuff. I don't. So after 3 years, I just said, "That's it. I want a divorce." So that's the that's the sacrifice you have to make if you're true to yourself. And you know, I'm divorced 3 years. I'd rather be with somebody, but I'd rather be by myself than be in that environment that I was in. So, and what we say in AA is to thine own self be true, right? So I have to be true to myself. Okay. Who's got a question? Come on, because we only got 5 minutes. I don't want to start on step 5. Workshop. Yeah, it's 2 parts. You see, if you go to this is this year's. This is no, this year's YouTube, but you want to go to BB Study 2022. And you want to put in this, you'll see relationship part 1, relationship part 2. It was done right here, the last one I did in this room a few years ago. No, I did a few years ago. But if it doesn't come up for some reason, because there's so many videos on that channel that I just gave you. If you don't find it, just go to YouTube, type in Danny Falcone relationship part 1. And it'll come up.
Again. Yeah.
Well, that's what's on there. That's what I did here 3 years ago. No, not for. When I'm done with this course here, I'm not doing this for at least a few more years. I did this class for 29 years in a row. 29 years in a row. Who was it that was in here? Doug. Was it Doug, Joe, last time? He was freaking out that I was quitting on 29 years. He was like, how could you quit on 20? Why don't you do one more year and quit on 30 years? I said, because I'm not obsessed like you are. So I quit on 29 years, and that was 3 years ago, and now people have been asking me, so I said, okay. So now after this, maybe in 3 years, I'll come back and do it again. I'm sorry, said what? No, not in self-esteem. 4 in column 3. Yeah, in column 3. If you have to, you can put 4 checks in column 3. It's more accurate if you can put your most blaring and glaring check and keep it to 3. In column 5, you want to keep it to 2 for sure. In column 3, 3 or 4 is okay. No, you want to do them all. You want to count all your check marks for each 6 columns that you have. There's 6 columns in column 3, and you want to count all your check marks in those columns. Okay, does that help you? Are you still confused on it? We can talk about it. We got a few minutes. So, did you do your did you fill out your sheet yet with your resentments? Oh, well, when you do, after you do column 1, then you do column 2, then you do column 3, and that's where you'll see all your check marks. Yeah, well, it's for one person or an institution or a principal, but you add them all together at the end. Wherever there's a check mark in each column, you count how many there are. And I'm telling you, that's going to be so accurate. That's going to pinpoint the exact nature of your wrongs. Where your anger stemmed from is going to be your high number there. 99 out of 100 times, it's going to be because of that. Or there might be some that's, you might have 22 in one box and 21 in another box. Then it's kind of a toss up which one's getting you angry. But when you get angry, you can figure it out. You could, no, listen, it's my emotional security, it's my self esteem, or it's my material security, or it's my personal relationships, whatever it is, you'll know because your inventory don't lie to you. It's there and it's spot on. If you did an inventory but you didn't use the sheets, you have 5 columns. Okay. Well, if you don't have the resentment, then don't waste time with it, right? If you're not mad at something, don't waste time. Then whatever you did worked. You know, typical alcoholic behaviors. I want it to work better. You know, no, don't do that. But if you think that some of them you still have, then do them on these sheets. The only thing is that I don't know other people. Over the years, people have made sheets like mine, but they're not, and they're a little different. And I don't know how well they help you pinpoint the exact nature of your wrongs or the exact where your fear stems from. So we'll see. All right. Anybody else got anything? No? Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. See you next week. Thanks for